Congratulate the California Clean Money campaign for all its leadership here. Stephanie Grossman, where is she now? There. Not only for this, which is incredibly important, but all the times you've gone out of your way to help progressives all over this great state. Thank you so much for hosting this event. Nancy Neff for all her hard work as well. Trent Lang for your leadership on this issue. You know, when I first had this wonderful opportunity to spend the winter here this year, which Stanford offered me the chance to pick which quarter I wanted to come. And, it was a really tough call. Plus you had no rain, which I know wasn't great for the environment, but it was kind of a comfortable time. But one of the first times I ventured off the farm, as I learned it was called, I came to the PDC event, and Diane Rope comes up to me, and the first thing I'm asked to do is, will I sign a petition for the disclosure? And I said, well, I'm not from California. They said, well, it's not a formal petition. We just want to get named. So this was the first thing that it was mentioned to me when I came to this great state, and wanted to be involved in any way I could, and said, gee, if somebody invited me to come back to California, you know, I just might do it. So thank you for giving me that opportunity and getting me involved in this. Of course, especially Anna. You know, you have every reason to be proud of this district. I would say it's second only to the entire state of Wisconsin. It's the greatest place. You have every reason to be proud of it, but you have every reason to be so proud of your member of Congress. You know, in the Senate, everybody goes, my friend often means you're not somebody's friend. This is a friend. This is a very effective member of Congress, but also somebody who conveys warmth and humanity in a place that desperately needs it. This is what she brings in addition to her effectiveness. Thanks for taking the lead on this federal contractor issue. Through Progressives United, one of the very first things we did was praise the President for at least considering. Right. And I know you're the one that's actually pushing it, but we were disappointed as well that he backed off, because that is one of the most important pieces of legislation in terms of disclosure in the country. So keep going on it, and we will do what we can to help you. And thanks for being so kind in your introduction, for being here. This AB 1648, the California Disclose Act, is obviously one of the most important pieces of legislation in the nation with regard to campaign finance. We had the opportunity yesterday to send an email to our supporters of Progressives United in California, which number 35,000 just in California alone. We get our most support. California is number one in terms of the people who are trying to help us undo Citizens United and all of the consequences of it. You know, people think that the Supreme Court struck down the McCain-Feingold bill. Well, here's how I explain it. Actually, the McCain-Feingold bill, the ban on soft money to the parties, is still the law. Yeah. But it's like this. McCain and I saw that there needed to be another brick put on top of a wall of law. So we built that brick over 8 years, and we put it on there. The Supreme Court said it's okay. Then the Supreme Court came along with a huge mallet and smashed all the bricks underneath our brick, which still stands. Not so good. The purpose of McCain-Feingold was to close a loophole where unlimited contributions from corporations and labor unions were being given directly to the political parties and raised by members of Congress in ungodly amounts of money. So that's still the law. But the Supreme Court said, what we're going to do is go out of our way to upend a law signed by Teddy Roosevelt in 1907, the Tillman Act, which said that corporations couldn't use their treasuries for politics. The same rules were applied to unions in 1947 when the Taft-Hartley Act was passed. No one ever said that this wasn't the law. No one questioned it. Now, when I went on Stephen Colbert, he said to me, what is it, Russ, you have, what do you got against corporations? He said, if you see one walking down the street, you cross the street. Would I let my daughters date a corporation? And I said, I've got nothing against corporations. But the wisdom of our nation, going back to the Gilded Age, going back to the era of the robber barons, and as I always say, got to be a little careful about that around here, talking about robber barons. But having said that, this has been the unquestioned understanding of the wisdom of our people that we don't want the money you spend on toothpaste or detergent immediately, or gasoline, to be immediately used for candidates that you don't believe in. Supreme Court apparently thought it had the power just to completely undo that. And it has been devastating. Devastating. We, as an organization, Progressives United, working with organizations like yours, are trying to identify places where efforts to undo this are working. And so I went to Massachusetts and appeared with the wonderful candidate for the Senate there, Elizabeth Warren, to point out that the person she's going to defeat, Scott Brown, was the deciding vote that prevented us from having a National Disclose Act. He was the deciding vote. And so, obviously, the Senate is critical, the House is critical, but so are the state initiatives. We have been to New York to encourage Governor Cuomo to do what it looks like he might do on fair elections in that state. Connecticut has a disclosure bill on the governor's desk. Rhode Island has good legislation percolating on that as well. But the big one is California.
Yeah.
The largest state in population, and yes, the largest state in money. Let's be honest. This is the place where the greatest amount of money is generated. It has changed from the days when it was New York. Whether it's conservative or liberal, this is the place that is most significant. And a victory here with this fantastic effort that is so close would be a galvanizer for the entire country and for this effort. And the purpose is to find out who's given the money. And perhaps learning why, because that's the first step. It's not enough just to learn who's giving the money. It's fantastic that this legislation would force the top 3 companies to not only disclose who they are, but put their logos on the ad. You know, the stockholders are going to love that. You know, that's a fantastically smart proposal. But the purpose here is to generate a public awareness of the corrupting overtaking of our democracy. People don't really necessarily know. They just have an inkling of what's going on. This isn't the Gilded Age. This is the Gilded Age on steroids. Because companies used to have to rely on the Gilded Age, as awful as they were sometimes in terms of monopolies. They still needed American workers and farmers and small business people to survive. Now they just ship jobs overseas. Now they just do the opposite, and so they don't even need us, and they know it. This is what's particularly pernicious about the situation we're in. The goal, of course, is in addition to having the disclosure, is to create the kind of political energy so that we can overturn Citizens United. And people say, is the only way we can do this by amending the Constitution? No. I mean, if we could do that, that's something you might want to talk about. We just need to overturn it. It was one vote. Now, one way to do it, and I know this is a non-political event from a partisan point of view, but I would suggest in my capacity to co-chair the President's campaign that, you know, having Barack Obama in there for 5 more years will probably lead to better justices. That's the sort of middle-term objective of overturning Citizens United. But there's an even greater possibility, not greater, but an even more interesting possibility. I'm not so sure that this Supreme Court isn't feeling the heat. This was a crazy, unlawful decision. I know that some of the justices will never change, but I believe that Justice Kennedy, a Stanford man, and Chief Justice Roberts, who I'm very upset with for what he did here, may be thinking about the reputation of the Supreme Court. Here's an institution that we used to admire because we used to go, you know, that guy, He was appointed by a Republican, and look what he's doing. Or look at that guy. He was appointed by John Kennedy. Whizzer White, gee, he's awfully conservative. It wasn't a cooked deal. It wasn't a partisan body. We grew up to believe in that. That was a central faith of all of us in our country. It's changed. This Supreme Court in Bush v. Gore made fools of themselves. It was a terrible decision. 10 years later, the other part of the bookend, the other bookend is Citizens United. Another lawless decision. If they put on top of this now, striking down 70 years of effort to get health care for all Americans, I just don't know what we're to think anymore. Are they the legislature? And I think if you look at the polls, the Supreme Court's reputation is plummeting. And it's partly because of this decision, Citizens United. How many times do you think people actually know the name of the case? You know, it's not what people spend their time on. Roe v. Wade, Brown versus Board, Citizens United, and not for good reason. That's significant. And so I believe it's possible, with a challenge that's now coming from Montana, that the court is looking at right now. They're going to decide in June whether to have oral argument on Montana's assertion that their law banning corporate contributions should stand. If they take that oral argument, they may or may not, they may just affirm it. If they take that oral argument, it will be held in September, right before a certain election. And so there is a possibility that the court will begin some retreat. But the court, let's face it, it's a legal body, it's also a political body. It's worried about its reputation. What you are doing by educating the public about this will affect not only what legislators do, and I praise all of the legislators here for their leadership on this issue. It affects what legislators think and do here. It affects what they do in Washington. But the Supreme Court also has to be on notice that it has gutted our democracy, and that is intolerable. So this is a big game with a lot of strategies involved, but nothing is more important than getting the additional votes on the California Disclose Act. Thanks for having me here.